Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I'm going to bring you something new, something different, and something PvP. That's right guys, my first ever PvP build, Nature's Wrath. This is a Warden PvP build. It is made for Cyrodiil play. It is made for CP play. You could probably get away with playing this in non-CP. I don't know how well it would work, but it might be pretty good. Not sure. So let's get right into it. As you can see here, we are an Orc Warden. Orc is not BIS, but it is really good for this build because it does give you that little bit of extra health. It gives you that extra stam, and yeah, it just works out really well. As you can see though, we do have a 1756 stam recovery. Health recovery is kind of low, but we are using Dubious Cameron Throne. You can use the Artaeum food, fish whatever fillet thing, and that will give you extra health recovery, which would be good for this. I'm not gonna lie about that. The magic recovery's on the down low, and it's really bad that it's like that, but it works out. So as you can see, we do have weapon damage coming in at 2,991, which actually we get to about 4k weapon damage with this build. It's really good. Our spell and physical resistance do seem kind of low, coming in at 16,000, 518 on both sides, but if you look, our crit resist is 2307. That's a really good crit resist for this build. And then moving on down here to this, we are running the Warrior Mundus Stone because we do want that extra weapon damage. It kind of just beefs us up a little bit, makes us a little bit more on the aggressive side, if you will. Dubious Cameron Throne for the food. Like I said, you can use the Artaeum food. It's a little bit better, and that will give you max health, max stam, and health recovery plus stam recovery, which will put you at about 600 on the health recovery, which is nice for PvP to come in with a little bit of health recovery. The magic recovery is where we're really suffering here, in my opinion. So, moving on to the gear. Now, this is where things get really good. What's the one thing Sword and Board is missing? A bleed. And we'll get to that in a second. So, our first set that we're running is Bloodspawn. Bloodspawn is awesome for this build because it gives you an extra 6,450 on the physical and spell resist for 6 seconds. It also gives you 14 ultimate on a 6% proc chance for both those things, and it gives you a little bit of stam recovery, which really helps this build. Now, moving on to the first gear set, this is where things get different, like I said, because this is something you don't see a lot of people running in PvP, but we are going with the Savage Werewolf set. The reason why we're using this set, gives us max stamina, it gives us some weapon damage, it gives us some stam recovery, which we need, and then on top of that, your light and heavy attacks rend flesh, causing your enemies to bleed for 1,210 physical damage every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. So this allows you to put a little bit of pressure on people while you're fighting them. It allows you to get that bleed on them, and that bleed can really, really help out. Now the next set we're using is something a little off from the atypical. This is more of a tankier type set, but I really thought it would really play well with this because of what it does also. We're using Twin Sisters. Twin Sisters gives us more stam recovery, a little bit more max stamina, some little bit of extra weapon critical, which is fine. You know, having a little bit of extra weapon crit is nice, but when you block an attack, you have a 20% chance to cause all enemies within 5 meters of you to bleed for 10,405 damage over 8 seconds. This effect can occur once every 8 seconds. Now, I have tested this build, or this gear set. It's really good. I was actually playing around with a similar setup the other night in PvP. I was using Twin Sisters. I was using the what set was that? It's a PvP set that gives you like 5% reduced damage from enemies and like some other stuff. I don't know. It's another Cyrodiil set. So I don't remember the name of it, but I was using that instead of this, and I kind of regret it. But then I was using Bloodspawn with the build on my Warden, and I play a Nord on live. So, but Twin Sisters like I would block, and it would just, you would just see this massive explosion around me, like this thing blast out from me, and then all of a sudden you just see numbers just flying up from everybody because I'd hit bleeds on all of them, and it worked out really well. It was really, really good. You can also hit enemies, like if somebody's spellcasting you, and you have melee players around you, you can also proc it, so it's really good. So we are running sword and board with these, just so you can see, and we are running a bow with this build. Now, you don't have to run a bow. You can run another sword and shield if you want to. You can run, you know, a two-handed on the back bar. It's really up to you. But let's go over the traits, Mundustone, and all, or traits and enchants on all the gear. So the traits for running on this, the 3 bigger pieces I went with well fitted to give me just a little bit more on the sprint reduced costs and the dodge roll reduced costs. That kind of saves me some resources. On the bigger pieces I went with in pin, or the smaller pieces I went in pin on all of them, so I could get that extra out of them for building up my crit resist, which is really something you need to do. And then on top of that, with the jewelry, we're running 2 infused with weapon damage and 1 swift with weapon damage. Now, if you wanted to, you could put another recovery here if you wanted to get some more recovery out of the build. That's fine. It works out. Now, the pots I'm using on here are not what I'm using on live. In fact, I don't even remember the ones I'm using on live. But I think they're the immovable pots, because it gives you that snare resistance, so... But on the shield, we are running another in-pin shield. So when we swap bars, we do lose some crit resist, but not a whole lot. So that's kind of the reason why I'm running it here. And then on the sword, I'm running infused with disease damage to, you know, get that negative effect on the enemies and stuff. And then on the back bar, I'm using a weapon damage enchant, which is really good, especially with the way we have this set up. It will keep proccing that weapon damage, so we keep it more often and more effectively on our character. So now that you guys have seen that, on the gear though, when it comes to the enchants, I am running 3 tri-stats on the big pieces. The smaller pieces, I'm running max stam, so this really helps give you that higher stamina pool and everything like that, because you don't need a lot of magicka with this build. It's the main reason why you have the magicka is for your buff, your resistance buff, and your shield, so, which we'll get to. And then the shield down here has a tri-stat on it as well. So let's go ahead and move on now to the skills. Remember to get all your class passives, guys, because you are going to be using skills from all these, and there is a reason why I have a few of these unlocked that you see, like Polar Winds. I did some testing with it. Living Trellis, I did some testing with. Didn't really work out, but make sure you get all your class passives. Moving on to the weapons, one-handed sword and shield, you want all the passives, and on bow, you want all the passives. Now, before you guys say that sword and shield, like, it would be better to use dual wield with this, or use a two-handed with this, it would be, but with this setup, because sword and board does give you 5% more weapon damage, it is 1, maybe 2% off from the 6% you can get from this. So it's not that much of a difference, except it gives you 6% of the offhand's weapon damage. So that's a slight difference, but it's not major difference. I think you end up with like a 3,000 something, just over 3,100 and something. So you lose about 100 weapon damage here when you use dual wield. Maybe a little bit more. It might be 3,200. I'm not quite exact on that, but still, I like this setup. I love using the sword and board with this. On the bow, get all the passives. And with the bow, you can see we only have 2 skills here. Draining Shot, and we have Venom Arrow. And I'll get to why I chose those 2. Moving on to the armor passives, top 3, you definitely want these. Medium armor, you want all of them. And then the heavy armor, you definitely want the top 3 on there as well. Soul Magic, just need the soul summons with the soul lock. Comes in handy, because if you do die in PvP, this allows you to res without using a soul stone. So... moving on to Undaunted, you want both the Undaunted things. And then Alliance War, you don't need any of the stuff here if you don't want it. Fighter's Guild, that's the one. Fighter's Guild. You want all the passives. We are using Dawnbreaker Smiting, so getting that 3% of extra weapon damage is kind of nice. And we aren't using Flawless Dawnbreaker in PvP, because Dawnbreaker Smiting is a lot better, because it puts a stun on him. Moving on to racials. You want to get the racials. If you're doing this build, I say Orc is best because you get the max health, you get the max stamina, and then down here you do get health recovery, but you get that extra healing received, which is really, really good. And then you get Swift, which allows you to reduce your sprint cost by another 12% and increases your regular base movement speed by 10% and increases your melee damage by 4%. So you're going to be on that sword and board a lot. Moving on to medicinal use. Or alchemy, medicinal use is really good, even in PvP and with provisioning, gourmet, and connoisseur. Alright, now that we've done that, let's get started with the skills. Starting with our main bar, sword and board. Starting with invasion. Now, invasion doesn't hit as hard as crit rush from the two-handed. Or critical charge. It doesn't hit as hard, but this does do a stun for 4 seconds, and the stun is up to 88% longer depending on the distance you travel. The longer the distance, the more of a stun you get. So it's a really powerful stun, guys, and it's a really good gap closer, and it's kind of cheap. Sorry about the coughing. Next up, we have Pierce Armor. We have this because it does do major fracture, it does do major breach, which boosts your damage against enemies really well, but it also does a lot of damage. So I think I crit somebody the other night for like what was it, 7? Or I hit him for like 12k, I think it was, almost, on a crit. So I was like, wow, that's in PvP. Next up, we have Heroic Slash. We have this here because it does give us minor heroism, which allows us to generate a lot of ultimate, and it stacks well with Bloodspawn in PvP, and it'll allow us to drop Dawnbreakers a lot more. It'll allow us to drop our back bar ultimate a lot more. So, really good, and we also get that minor maim, which also reduces their damage, and it's got a nice CC on it. The movement speed reduction of 60% for 4 seconds, that really like helps you. If you can get that charge off and you Heroic Slash them, they're stunned, and then they get that movement speed reduction. So if they do break free, they're still slow, and you can get another good, couple of hits on them. Next up, we do have Subterranean Assault. This thing's coming in at 12,132 poison damage, and it also applies major fracture to multiple targets, which is another good thing. Hitting multiple enemies with this is really good, but when you already have breach on somebody, just the damage from this coming off is insane. So usually I get this up, and then I shield charge them, and then I pierce armor, Heroic Slash them, and this will go off, and boom, they're dead. So it's really powerful. Next up, we have Soothing Spores. This is really good, actually. Really good, powerful heal. Even though it says it's reading a tooltip of 7,454, it heals for 15% more on allies that are within 8 meters of you. It does heal you for a decent amount. I'll go ahead and show you guys. So, as you can see, there's 4,286. If you can get it to crit, it's a 7k heal. And this, we are in Cyrodiil, guys. So, alright. And I do want to show this so you guys can see. So the heal now is like almost 8k on a crit and 4,600 there. So, and I want to show you these tooltips so you can see almost 9k on Heroic Slash, and Pierce Armor goes up to 8k. Your shield charge goes up to almost 6k. This thing actually goes up to 8k if you hit him with a poison shot first, or venom arrow first. So really nice. And then we do have our last skill here, which is Flawless, or Dawnbreaker Smiting. As you can see, this thing's coming in at 13,000 physical damage up front, and additional 13,000 over 5 seconds, and it also stuns the enemy. So this is really good in Cyrodiil. Moving on now to the back bar. This is where things get kind of strange, because a lot of people aren't used to this kind of setup. But we are running Venom Arrow for the dot and the damage up front. But it also, if you hit an enemy with this ability, and they that are casting, you can interrupt them, set them off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds. So it's a really good thing for when you're fighting casters at a range. You can stun them, not lock them down, shield charge them, and take them out really quick. Next ability is Shimmering Shield. This is very, very powerful. This does give us a good shield. As you can see, for 17,000 it absorbs 3 projectiles. Each projectile restores magicka and gives us major heroism for 6 seconds, gaining 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. Like I said, Heroic Slash, Blood Spawn, and this, you are going to have ultimate flying in. So, it's ridiculous. And then next up, we do have Resolving Vigor here. If you wanted to put Caltrops here, you can, because the other heal is going to be good for you. I have Vigor here because I like to have a tick heal. It's just really good to have while you're in Cyrodiil, to have a tick heal. You can also swap this out on the front bar if you want and put it where Soothing Spores is. It doesn't heal for much, to be honest. I mean, we're looking at like 2k on crits. And then if you buff up, if you buff up with your plant, and then you do Vigor, you go up to, you know, a little bit better on the heals, but it's not something that's going to keep you alive the whole time. Alright, moving on. We do have Bull Netch here. This is just for magic recovery, or stam recovery. It gives you a lot. It also gives you Major Brutality, which is also beneficial to the build. It gives you that increased weapon damage by 20%, and then it adds to that 5% of your sword and board. Next up, we do have Ice Fortress. This gives you Major Resolve, Major Ward. It also gives you 8% damage reduction, but that Major Resolve and Major Ward are really important because it gives you 5,280 extra to your resistances. So when you're fully buffed up, you go up to 21,000 spell resistance, 21,000 physical, and then if your blood spawn procs, you actually go to 2828. So you get a lot of resistances, physical and spell with this, plus you get a lot of crit resist. So overall, really, really powerful on this build. Last ability we have on our bar is here for more like, you know, like, oh crap, I'm getting beat on, I don't have enough healing. We have Enchanted Forest, and this thing you can proc, pretty much keep it up almost non-stop. And as you can see, this thing heals you up front for a decent amount. It heals you over time, every second for 6 seconds. And if you heal yourself or an ally below 50% health, you get 20 ultimate back. It's just really good. So really good in PvP. This is a really good skill setup for this build. Moving on to the back bar, or onto the champion points. Starting with the Red Tree guys. We have 56 in Ironclad. This helps reduce that direct damage we take from enemies by 20%. It's really good. We do have 14 into medium armor focus. This gives us 1374 physical resistance for wearing 5 or more pieces of medium armor. This is a medium armor build, by the way. So 14 in a spell shield. This gives us 1374 spell resist, and then we have 38 into resistances, giving us an extra 1017 crit resist to add to that in pen. So moving on to the middle here, we have 37 into Hardy and 37 in Elemental Defender. These both reduce physical, poison, disease damage, and Flame, Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 9%. You also have your Ice Fortress, 8%. You actually have a 17% reduced damage, which is really good. We do have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing damage taken from damage over time by 13%. You could take this up more if you wanted to, but you really don't need to, even in PvP. It's really hardcore dot play right now. But with all the things that you can do with this build, you don't really need this, like any more than that. Moving on over here, now this is where things get really crazy, because we do have 43 into Quick Recovery, giving us increased healing received by 10%. We are an orc, we get an additional 5%. We have 15% healing received in medium armor. Insane heals coming in. It's really good. The nice thing about over here too, guys, is we do get, is it over here, over here? It's over here. We also get this. When you activate block, you gain a damage shield that absorbs 627 damage for 3 seconds. And it can pop every 10 seconds. So even in here, like that small shield that you do get is kind of nice, because when you throw it up, it gives you just a little bit of cushion, you know, on an attack or something. Alright, moving on to the green tree. Starting with the first one, we do have 37 into Warlord. This reduces break free cost by 15%. Cyrodiil is all about resource management. Everything you do is about resource management. You could put 56 into here, but you got to really spread these points out really well for Cyrodiil, for it to work in Cyrodiil. We have 23 into Sprinter. This reduces our sprint cost by 14%. We have a lot of reduced sprint costs with this build. It's just insane how much reduced sprint cost we get. We do have 25 into Bashing Focus. This reduces our bash cost by 15%. Like I said, you do block with this build, and you will use that sword and shield to bash people. So, moving on to this other one, we have 56 into Mooncalf. This increases stamina recovery by 12%. We have 64 into Tenacity. This gives us 13% back on our fully charged heavy attacks. And over here we have 37 into Tumbling, reducing dodge roll cost by 15%. 28 into Shadow Ward, reducing block cost by 12%. Now remember, this right here, this 15%, stacks with all of our stuff, our well fitted, all that. So we have like a 30% reduced cost, plus our we have 50% reduced cost on our dodge rolls. So really good. Moving on, we have 43 into Bless. This is just to increase our healing done, because we do want those heals to heal us really well. So, moving over here, we have 39 into Physical Weapon Expert. This gives us 22% on our light and heavy attack damage for our weapon, our sword and shield, and our bow. So this just increases that damage output really well. We have 81 into Master at Arms. This increases our damage done with direct damage attacks by 24%. That means our light and heavy attacks, our pierce armor, our charge, all that stuff is getting boosted by a lot. I've gotten some really powerful hits with this. We also get Tactician, that whenever we dodge roll dodge to an attack, you can send an enemy off balance. This really helps. And then we also get Butcher, guys, by the way. So your heavy attacks, light and heavy attacks, when the enemy's below 25% health, is boosted by another 5%. So you get a lot of damage boost out of this. We have 32 into Mighty. This increases physical poison disease damage by 8%. We have 23 into Thaumaturge. This just increases our dot damage just a little bit by 12%, or 10%. So, and then we have 37 into Precise Strikes, giving us 15% crit damage. It's more for the healing than it is for the critical damage. And then we have 15 into Piercing, giving us an extra 1465 physical pin on our attack. So we have like 6k, 7k on our physical pin. It's pretty nice, actually. And that is our CP, guys. Now, I would love to show you guys some of this build in PvP, but I don't have Savage Werewolf on live, so I can't really show it off. But trust me, this build is pretty amazing in how it works. I wish there was somebody here in Cyrodiil so I could show you guys like how well this build can really work. I mean, it is kind of crazy when you're running around and fighting enemies with it, and just they're not killing you, they're not hurting you. It's pretty crazy. So I mean, if I didn't have to go like a million miles outside of this area to get into a, you know, to try and find if there's anybody else on the PTS, I would do it. But unfortunately, I don't have that, you know. But I am gonna get that Savage Werewolf set for myself in on the live servers, because I think I'm gonna make one of my Wardens like this. I think I really like it. I have too much fun playing this build. It's so much fun, because you get a lot of bleeds, and when you can bleed on a light attack and a heavy attack, it's insane, because you wouldn't expect that on something like this. especially somebody running sword and shield, comes running up to you, charges you, hits you with a light attack. Next thing you know, you're bleeding. You're like, what the hell? And then if you go to hit them and they block, and next thing you know, you're getting blood again for 10k damage. And you're like, you know, again, you're like, what the hell? Like, where's all these bleeds coming from? This guy's using a sword and board and a bow. Now, a nice thing is that if you do want to use dual wield on this build, this bow, the back bar is really good with dual wield, and the front bar is the back bar is also really good with two-handed on for that purpose. You can also put dual wield and two-handed, or dual wielded and bow if you wanted to run the build that way, because you just have to block, and even blocking with dual wield can be kind of cool for that purpose. So I keep forgetting I have to use the gate. But yeah, I mean, like I said, when you're in Cyrodiil and you get all buffed up, and you want to hit your bigger right away so you can get that higher 26k health, because that's gonna give you some really decent survivability while you're fighting enemies, and then you get all that other stuff. So it's, like I said, overall this build is really kind of well put together. I'm not gonna say it's perfect or it's great, but it is really well put together in how it operates and how it's set up. So, but yeah, that's Nature's Wrath, guys. That's my first PvP build I've done. I hope you guys like it. Like I said, it's really dependent on the player, but I love this build. I was really surprised at how well it turned out when I got it all put together and was kind of tinkering with it and stuff, because I did run around the open world with it, and it even in the open world I was just destroying everything. So, because this thing just has insane damage with a sword and shield. Now, another thing that you can use instead of heroic slash is use deep slash. But that ultimate gen, like the ultimate gen on this, is just so good that you're dropping Dawnbreakers left and right, and you have the tree up constantly. So, because they're so cheap. But yeah, if you guys like this build, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you can hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.